Knights of the Old Republic 2. How does one even talk about Knights of the Old Republic 2?
Yeah.
I'm still kind of figuring that out, but we are going to try. And, I mean, one thing I was kind of asking myself is how the Force are we going to discuss KOTOR 2 and pretend we're intelligent? But what do you think,
Right.
Brian?
Yeah, so KOTOR 2 is going to be a tricky one to tackle, I think, but I think that we are up to the task. We need to sit back, we need to analyze KOTOR 2, we need to get into the mindset of Kreia and the cast of characters, see if we can make heads or tails of this thing. It's going to be dicey, but I think we can do it. I think we're up to the challenge.
Yeah. If there's anything we can do, it's go in depth, you know? Maybe it's
That's
not
right,
the
yeah.
depth people want.
It will be deep, though. It will be
It
deep.
will be deep. Maybe we're going into the wrong pool that people want depths in, but what can we say? It will be deep, and we try for introspection. Maybe we'll be, like, analyzing, like, but what about Beodur's remote, you know? And, like, some people are like, I don't know. Like, why don't you talk about Kreia or, like, philosophy or something? And, yeah, so if anything, we're probably going to have really long episodes, and we will talk about it. Maybe it's not going to be to the quality people want, but damn it if we're not going to try, you know?
That's right. It'll be to our own high quality, and it's going to be fun because KOTOR 2 is a game that a lot of people like. You and I both like it. We like kind of the lore and the philosophy behind it. So whatever this thing ends up being that we put together for KOTOR 2, it's going to be fun, and we're going to have fun doing it, I think.
Yeah, we plugged it we pitched, like, you guys are going to be we're so confident, you know, but...
That's right. Yeah, you've been waiting 18 years for us to dive into this, so...
and we're covering it, you know?
That's right.
So, KOTOR 2, who would you say are your favorite companions?
Oh, that's really kind of hard to say because they're all very different. I think probably from the outset, probably the one that comes to mind. And keep in mind, listeners out there, that these opinions are likely to change greatly from week to week as we talk about the series. But when I think about it, just kind of the first one that comes to mind is Bao-Dur. I think that him and his story is very interesting. Kind of the relationship that he has with the exile character is interesting. I like his voice in the game. So I think that Bao-Dur is probably my favorite, but really there's bits and pieces of, you know, all the characters that I like quite a bit. What about you, Cassia? Who, I guess if you had to pick one or a couple of the companions here, who would be your favorite from KOTOR 2?
That's so funny. You think I'm going to choose one because I'm like, I choose like 3 to 5, but I would say like,
who are your 13 favorite companions?
My 13, they're all my favorite. But I did do like a top 3 and honorable mentions, so I did
excellent. Okay.
Give myself some parameters. But number 1 is Kreia because, of course, it is. You know. Then my silver medal is Bao-Dur. I think he's just very interesting. I think the games didn't quite give him enough depth in some ways because it seems like he was there at the Mandalorian Wars, you know, and he personally knew Mitra, the Jedi exile during the Mandalorian Wars, and I'm like, I think that's more interesting to me than like some other characters, like maybe like Atten at times, but my third favorite character is Mira. Because there's a lot going on there, you know, like she lost her family and then she was adopted into the Mando culture. And then she became a bounty hunter who doesn't kill her targets, you know? And I think there's a lot going on. And it's like not like a lot going on that sometimes with Atten, like it feels a little bit too busy. but for her,
Right,
it seems like it seems like everything's in sync, and like it makes sense. So I find her interesting. And then my honorable mention is actually the disciple. I think his name is pronounced Mikal. I call him Michael, but I think that he didn't quite come to life the way I think he was meant to in the game. And maybe it's just because of the zeitgeisty kind of like, it came out around like 2004, 2005, this game. So it kind of like had a little bit of like a love triangle. And I think like in some ways people just kind of interpreted the disciple as like the wrong choice in like a love triangle. But like, for me, like, I find him interesting. I would maybe, like, get rid of, like, a bit of the disciple wanted Mitra to be his master, and he kind of always had a crush on her kind of thing.
Yeah.
But if you listen to him, it's kind of like he is a true believer in the Jedi Code, but he's not gonna say that they're flawless, kind of like how Bastila would in KOTOR when he's not just recycling dogma. He's a deep thinker, and I think he's probably one of the best light-sided people in the game. So,
yeah, that's one of the trickier parts of KOTOR 2, because you just came off of playing Knights of the Old Republic, and you get into KOTOR 2, and the story is much more deep in a sense, but it's a lot more spread out. So you really have to do a lot more work to get all of these characters' stories. Whereas opposed to in KOTOR 1, if you played the game, you got kind of the gist of everyone's stories, but you really had to put in an effort to get kind of the backgrounds and the motivation for all of these different companions that you're meeting throughout the game.
Yeah, and a few people kind of commented to us that their favorite companion was Beodur, and we got an Atten. And those are some solid choices, and I do like Atten. I just don't like certain parts of him. But yeah. I will say he has, like, I think the most iconic outfit in KOTOR 2.
He does have a pretty good outfit. He's definitely a product of that early, like, to mid 2000s kind of mindset, how they were writing male characters at the time. So yeah, so definitely some room for improvement there. But yeah, kind of in general, like I really like Atten's story, and how he kind of fits into this light side versus dark side, and how that pairs against how you're playing as the Jedi Exile. I think that's really interesting. And one of the other things that I really like about Beodur is he's, like you said, he knows Mira, he knows the Exile kind of from this previous life. So I think that it's really kind of interesting how he's a really important part of her kind of regaining that kind of memory, that kind of mental block that she's put on kind of her actions. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. So this game originally came out in 2004. When did you first play it?
Yeah, so this came out in 2004 on the Xbox, and then just a few months later out onto the PC. So I played it probably right around then, I would guess. I was a little late to playing KOTOR, but I remember I picked up my Xbox, and it came with KOTOR and KOTOR 2. So I played through KOTOR, and then I pretty much immediately went on to play KOTOR 2. So I probably played it, I don't know, probably not too long after it came out. I would guess sometime in like the spring or summer of 2005, I was playing it on the Xbox. What about you? Where did this fall in line with your KOTOR video game playing?
Memory is a funny thing.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's what KOTOR 1 teaches us. I'm trying to remember. I think I played both of them, I think I would hear, my video game friend, on the bus. We were in the very back row, and we were so cool,
Yeah, that's right.
I think he would, he was telling me about, KOTOR, in 2004 4, I want to say. I want to say, like, I actually bought both of, like, KOTOR 1 and KOTOR 2 on PC, like, at the same time. So, which is so weird to me after, like, talking about it, because they're so, like, distinct in my mind, you know? But I guess, like, I think what happened is I bought them both at once, or maybe I played one and then the other, but I actually can't remember that. So I feel a little bit, like, silly, but yeah, so I want to say 2005 probably. So
yeah, so it's probably about the same time for me. One of the things that I do vividly remember about playing KOTOR 2, and especially because I played it more or less immediately after finishing the first KOTOR, was a couple of things. It's very strange when you go straight from one to the next, that it's not, you know, carrying on that story with the same cast of characters. You're like, who are all these new people? That's kind of strange. And the other thing that was strange is the gameplay, the way that it looks, and the way that you interact with the game is basically identical, but Obsidian like just did like a mirror image, so everything that you clicked on the left was now on the right, and that was kind of strange, going straight from one to the other. I don't know why the decision was made to do that, but I thought that was very weird. And I just replayed it just a few months back, and I did kind of the same thing where I played KOTOR, finished it, KOTOR 2, and yeah, it threw me for a loop again, the controls. But yeah, I definitely remember, you know, playing it on the Xbox back when right around the time that it first came out.
Yeah. And some of the responses we got, and I realized, like, this is a mistake on my part. Someone said that HK-47 was their favorite companion, so that's on me. I'm just a meatbag, you know, but...
well, and you have to really put a lot of work into getting HK, because you have to find all the pieces of him, so...
Yeah. There could be a lot of fun, like, putting HK-47 back together, you know. It could be like a little quest, like, I don't know.
Yeah, there you go. You just get his head and he just rattles off little zingers at you the whole time.
Yeah. And then here are some responses about when some people first played KOTOR 2. Someone said, I tried to play it back when the restored content mod came out, and we'll talk more about the restored content mod. Problem was, I just couldn't get into the gameplay, so I watched my friend play it, which I can understand. It is kind of like an older game, which, I mean, it's an older engine. I mean, it's about 20 years old. I mean, that's why we're getting a KOTOR remake, you know? So it'll be easier to play. And then another response says, first played 6 months after its original release, and once again in the latter half of 2021.
Okay.
And then there was played it for the first time back in 2018. And I mean, it's kind of all over the place. It's kind of a timeless game, you know. When I first played it, I think, like, it wasn't as beloved as it is now, because people are just like, it's kind of like how we talk about episodes 4 and 5, they're just so different, you know, very different. Like, KOTOR 1 is very much a hero's journey, kind of road trip kind of thing. And KOTOR 2 is not that. It's very, very psychological, very gray. It just reminds me of, like, English courses, honestly. It's like, what do you think about this? Or a philosophy course, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the first game in that story is much more easily digestible, especially as a video game. You know, because most people that were playing this, you know, back when it came out were, you know, maybe like in their early teens or something, and you and you go into the story that's just so in depth, and it's so, like, much talking and philosophy and things. So I could definitely understand why it, you know, I mean, critically it did really well when it came out, actually, but I could see why, having played the both, why, you know, KOTOR 1's kind of held up on this pedestal, and KOTOR 2 kind of gets overlooked a lot of times. But then, you know, as you grow up and you think more about those stories, and if you have a chance to go back and replay it, you know, knowing what you know with the, you know, the experience of life, then I think that the story starts to make a little bit more sense. And yeah, the restored content stuff is pretty cool, I think. So
yeah, I think people fans of the first game were kind of expecting a continuation. And then it was kind of just like a lot of new characters and a totally new story, totally new tone. Kind of like, I guess like a horror kind of take on Star Wars mixed with like definite psychological tilts. It's very... KOTOR 2 is very unique, I would say, like in the Star Wars scape and outside of Star Wars as well. So,
yeah, definitely. And we've talked about it a couple of times now. So you had the restored content. So this game, like Cassie had said, it came out in 2004 and it was made by Obsidian. So it was a different video game company that had done the first one. The first one was done by BioWare. Obsidian was just a brand new company, and LucasArts came to them and asked them if they wanted to make a Star Wars RPG. So Obsidian actually pitched one, and LucasArts said, "No, we don't want you to do that." And then they came back and said, "Why don't you make KOTOR 2 instead?" So that's pretty impressive for kind of a brand new game company. I mean, they had experience working for other game companies, but they're making the follow up to one of the biggest, most beloved video games of this huge franchise of all time, and they're basically told that they get 15 months to make KOTOR 2, and then they said, well, you can have an extra couple of months, but then they came back on that and said, no, the deadline is what it is. So they ended up having to take out a bunch of stuff, a bunch of cutscenes, a bunch of dialogue choices, kind of these big story beats they had to remove to get it out in time. So then in 2009 to 2012, you had just a team of people who just wanted to see this thing happen. They kind of got all of the code for all this lost content, and they basically made what is known as the restored content patch. And now that's kind of the quote unquote canon version of KOTOR 2. So if you play like the Aspire ports on your on your iPhone or on your however you get it now, that's the version you get. You get this restored content version.
Huh, I didn't realize. So the restored content version is the canon version?
Yeah, so ever since it came out. So like I said, all of the ports, so like the phone ports that you have, purchase the game through like Steam, you have the option to put that pack on there. So that's what Aspire, who's handling the ports, they're considering that to be the kind of final build of the game, this restored content version.
Yeah, and I mean, props for like Obsidian Entertainment for delivering such a unique game that I think like rivals KOTOR 1, and sometimes it's more popular than KOTOR 1, depending on who you're talking to. And they were given, like, not a lot of time to do it, and, like, they actually accomplished a lot with what they did. Like, I know when it first came out, a lot of people were, like, kind of hard on them because the game felt unfinished, but it's because they were given, like, not enough time. That's barely a year, to make a game. And they made it from scratch. So. Yeah,
and I want to say too, I'm not 100% sure on the numbers, but I was kind of looking at it earlier today, and I want to say that like the team of people that were working on it was only like 20 people, and they ended up having to bring in a couple of extra people. LucasArts sent some of their people to kind of help with it to get this rushed deadline, but yeah, I mean, 15 months to do this whole story from scratch with all these new locations and characters and the story that we got and how deep it is, that's incredible, I think.
Yeah, and we'll definitely have to find the restored content team and talk to them, because what they did was remarkable. I'm sure they're still out there. If you know who they are, or if you are one of them, please reach out to us, and we would love to talk to you about what you did on KOTOR 2, the restored content mod. It's very amazing.
Yeah, definitely. And when I played through this last year, I played the restored content version of course. So I would really like to do kind of a deep dive on exactly what that is. I mean, in the game you can kind of tell because it'll just come into a cutscene that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with what you're doing, but it is kind of important for the story. But I would really like to do kind of like an analysis of exactly what was added and what parts of the story got changed or fill it out a little bit more. So maybe for the future, that's something we'll have to dig into a little deeper there.
Yeah, I've only played, I guess what would you call it, the unrestored content version, the original.
You got the basic KOTOR 2 content, I guess.
Because I'm just so basic, you know. But I think it's just, it's so interesting that there's two different versions, and like part of me, just my brain doesn't stop working sometimes, and it's just like, if KOTOR 2 were ever to be adapted, like, what would they do? Like, would they adapt the original version, the restored content version, a mixture of both, or kind of like pick and choose, or do something totally new? And like, I don't know, part of me is just like excited for any version, because I think like with KOTOR 2, no matter what happens, like people are going to be mad, and sometimes it's fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, doing an adaptation, we think, we've talked about several times, just you and I, but it'd be really tricky. The cast is big, their backstories are all big and huge. We went through KOTOR and did it as a proposed film trilogy, and we felt pretty good about being able to cover all of the things there, but just the breadth of the story is so big. But I'm definitely excited and interested to see parts of that story fleshed out, whether it would be in some sort of like TV series where maybe they just do like a couple of episodes about each of the characters, or books or comics, but anything that you can really kind of just give some life and give some story to this rich cast of characters, because I don't know that a movie is going to be able to do it. I think it's going to have to be some sort of like mixed media thing to get the point across for all of these people.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, like when I first played it, I was a teenager. A lot of the story went over my head, a lot of the characterizations. It was kind of unfinished, and like just like the fan reaction, the uber passionate fans were kind of just like, we wanted more KOTOR 1, and then we got KOTOR 2. But I think with the restored content, it's become much more beloved. And I think nowadays, like, I feel guilty if I say, like, I like KOTOR 1 more than KOTOR 2. Like, sometimes it switches. Like, I'm like, oh, I like KOTOR 2 more, But what were your kind of first thoughts compared to your thoughts now?
Yeah, same kind of thing. And, I thought that it was fine, and I like the characters that we got in KOTOR 2 kind of right off the bat. Like, I liked Atten, I liked the Exile, Mitra, I liked Kreia, I liked how that story got started. But yeah, I mean, you turned it on the first time, and you're like, oh, I was expecting to have, Revan and Bastila and Karth, and I'm not getting them. Oh, there's Karth in a hollow. Why is he not in the game, right? I thought, like everyone, that was going to be the story that was continuing. But yeah, props to Obsidian for going, pulling like a 180 and doing this whole other story. But yeah, now that I've kind of aged with it and had the chance to play through it a couple of times, and can kind of look back on it, yeah, you almost have to take them as, kind of two pieces of the same puzzle and put them together to get kind of this whole bigger story. And I think that that's really interesting. And I think that, like I said, kind of the lore and the world building, and just these characters are really interesting. And not to say that the characters from KOTOR 1 aren't, equally as interesting, but I think that there's just a lot of kind of depth to these characters and more like history and backstory that you could really explore and, get entire, tales weaved about them.
Yeah, with KOTOR 2, I think it's more about the journey rather than the destination. And I think with KOTOR 1, it's sort of flipped, where it's about getting to the Starforge. But KOTOR 2 kind of feels a bit like a tapestry. Like, the worlds kind of feel more connected. KOTOR 2 is kind of an examination of, I think, guilt and grief, like after a war, which I think is very profound. And KOTOR 1, like, I love it. I feel like it's a great story too, but KOTOR 1 is kind of just like a road trip, in some ways, I would say, like, the feel of KOTOR 2 is, like, definitely you're dealing with ambiguity on each of the worlds, and it kind of feels like they flow together rather than kind of being distinct worlds, even though they are very different environments.
Yeah, definitely agree. Now, I feel like the companions in KOTOR were more of that. They were companions to help you, like you'd said, on like this road trip kind of thing. But really, the companions in KOTOR 2 could almost be looked at as like parts of the psyche of the Jedi exile, and you could look at it much more analytically that way. And I think that's interesting. And like you said, it's just kind of dealing with grief and like the burden of guilt and things. So I really like Mitra Surik as a character, the exile who you play as, in KOTOR 2, and kind of her story, and dealing with that. And I think that that's pretty interesting. And yeah, just an exciting story to be told, I think. Just very different than KOTOR, and yeah, I think that was people's probably main takeaway from it. Back in 2004, and probably still up today. It's just that it's very different.
Yeah, and while like the companions in KOTOR 1, I think we're all kind of impacted by the Mandalorian Wars and the Jedi Civil Wars. I would say even more so in KOTOR 2, the companions are all kind of dealing with the aftermath of the Mandalorian Wars, and especially the Jedi exile, Mitra Surik. Some people love the name, some people don't like the name. Like, I am fine with the name Mitra Surik. So I think canonically, the Jedi exile is a female. So I think, like, in our podcast, we're just going to kind of go along with that, kind of how we would refer to Revan, like, as a he,
Yep.
But, like, however you interpret either of those characters is valid, and I think just for simplicity's sake, we're just going to refer to the Jedi exile as she, her, and Mitra Surik, or the Jedi exile. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as we kind of get into this more and we start talking a little bit more about these characters, yeah, hopefully we're able to, kind of dig into their stories a little bit and make, kind of heads or tails of them. We're probably going to be covering this a little bit differently than we did the KOTOR, which, at least from the time that I came on to the podcast, was more or less just kind of a big, very long, kind of year-long movie pitch. But, KOTOR 2, it's big and wide and vast, and has all of these different little nooks and crannies we can dig into. So I think we're really going to be trying to kind of break it down and take little bite-sized pieces of this, until we can wrap our heads around it. Because there's still things. I was playing it last year and I was like, oh, I don't remember that, and I don't know what that means, and I don't know how I feel about it. So there's always something to learn, and very much the game is dependent highly upon who you're taking with you in your party, how that story is being told. And it's unbelievable that they could, get into such deep storytelling in the amount of time that they had to put it together.
Yeah. And something that's interesting about KOTOR 2 is, like, for some missions, you definitely have to, like, bring a specific character to some of them, like, only Beodur can get you through this, or this has to be Mira's mission, and I think that's cool, because then everyone gets their moment to shine,
Yep.
And
yeah, it was a clever way to kind of force your hand a little bit to make sure that you were, getting the story beats from, the different characters that they wanted you to be.
Yeah. And we talked a little bit about locations. Some of our listeners said that they really liked Nar Shaddaa, Dantooine, and Onderon. What is your favorite and least favorite location? The
locations, I will say that the locations in KOTOR I thought were a little bit more interesting than the locations in KOTOR 2. I do not like Telos 4. I know that. Paragus, I remember at the time when I played it the first time, or probably the first couple of times, I'm like, man, I hate Paragus. But when I was just replaying it, I found it kind of interesting. It's kind of this, it's like this big, huge space station thing that you're on, and there's a lot of exploring and there's a lot of running back and forth, which is kind of annoying. But it has like this weird, like kind of like creepy, like horror vibe, like right off the start, and you meet Darsion, I think, right there, kind of the beginning of this thing. And so I actually like now more recently, I like Paragus, but if I had to pick probably my favorite place, it's probably Nar Shaddaa. Just because it's interesting with the multiple levels, and you have, kind of the different, classes there that you're digging into a little bit and learning about. So probably Nar Shaddaa is my favorite. But yeah, I've really come around kind of full circle on Paragus. But what about you? We have a lot of locations here in KOTOR 2. Any stand out to you, or any that you really don't care for? Or?
I think it is interesting that you say some of them are repeats, from like the previous game. I think like my least favorite, because I played the original playthrough, was Korriban, because it kind of just seemed. I mean, that's kind of the point of Korriban, is it's a dead world, and not many people are there. But
right,
it kind of just seemed a little bit too empty, like. Not too much was happening, even though like the point of Korriban is probably it's like a katabasis where you have to, like the Jedi Exile, it's kind of like she's going into a tomb and like reliving her past, and kind of having to make sense of like everything she did, and like seeing the results of that. So I guess it is interesting, and probably when we end up covering Korriban, I'm going to be like, I was wrong. It's my favorite, but yeah. I think it just seemed a little bit empty, like compared to Dantooine. You kind of see them rebuilding Dantooine, and like I thought that was a good recycled location because you saw some new areas. But I think my favorite is Onderon, because it's just a classic Tales of the Jedi location. And I think it's just unique, and there's dragons, and there's Dugzin, and there's a queen, and like Master Kavar. Like, I think it's just kind of like what I kind of like, and it was really cool to see Onderon later on in the Clone Wars.
Yeah, Onderon's a cool one, and you get to do some fun stuff there, and yeah, and I kind of like the ducks in there. You have like the Mandalorian encampment. That's pretty cool. So yeah, I mean, there's some cool stuff. I do think by and large that a lot of the locations, like you said about Korriban, they felt maybe a little empty. And I wonder if that was just a product of some time constraints where they didn't really get to fill these things up as much as they'd originally planned. But yeah,
for sure. So when we pitched KOTOR 1, it was kind of like examining the story of KOTOR 1 through the lens of like, we are pitching a movie trilogy to be released in theaters. How do you, I mean, it's probably going to change from this episode to like how we end up covering KOTOR 2, but what is your kind of dream adaptation for KOTOR 2? Would it be an ice-capade, a novel, a TV series, movies, a rap album, hip-hop album?
Okay.
Or what?
Yeah, I would like to have Kreia, the hip-hop artist, would be good. Yeah, we've pitched the ice-capade before. That would be good. GOTO on ice. Yeah, I don't know. That's tricky, and I think that was part of our hang-ups on getting into KOTOR 2, is we didn't really know how to approach it. So I guess right now, since I'm not being held to this steadfast belief, what I think would be good is you just went and watched the KOTOR trilogy that you and I put together. Is the most beloved film trilogy of all time. And you're ready. and you're ready to get into KOTOR 2. So what I think the best way to do it right now is that you do a Disney Plus series. It could be like a little mini series, like 4 to 6 episodes, and you do them, kind of about each of the characters, or maybe you could figure out how to get like 2 of the characters and at the same time, and you do that for over the course of a couple of years. You have maybe like 2 of these things come out a year. For 3 or 4 years. And that kind of lays out who everyone is, what their story is. And then at that point, I think you could do a film, maybe 2 films where you're kind of telling like maybe like the latter half of KOTOR 2. You kind of address like the first part of the game and everyone getting together maybe through those different mini series, and then you can kind of have some sort of like Avengers Assemble kind of thing to finish out the story in a film.
I'm trying to think what the battle cry could be like for the KOTOR 2 companions. Or
yeah, I don't know.
Would it be restored content mod? Assemble? I don't know.
That's right. Influence lost or influence gained. You just yell it and go.
Gained. Yeah. Maybe KOTOR 2 is actually going to be a lot more fun to cover because, like, I don't know. I'm just like I feel like so in awe of KOTOR 2 and inadequate. So I think I'm just going to take myself less seriously and just have fun with it. So maybe that will be, more funner. Just kidding. Funner isn't a word. But one thing I realized is like, if we mess up, guess what we can do later? We can restore the content later on in our
like
podcast.
That.
So it's like editing. It's fine, Yeah. So, but we did get some 2 good responses, like about like people's dream adaptations. The first one says, I'd have a 3-season show, 10 episodes each. I can't think of exactly where to go beyond that, but I'd for sure have Mitra Surik be aware of things and not have amnesia. Also, I know some folks hate her name, but I love it. And like, same. It's a good name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like her to kind of know. I'm okay with having her like repress the memory of kind of her final actions there, but I think to not just do like the identical like complete amnesia like we had with Revan. Maybe she knows who she is and knows where she was, but is just trying to kind of block out that pain. I think is probably a more interesting way to take it, for me at least.
Yeah, for me it gives her much more agency to remember what she did and like deal with it like in real time.
Yep.
And then another response from Marcus Mosley. He says it would have to go through some serious updates as story goes. His words, make Atten not such a dick for reals. There's a lot to be done, but I would agree with Jake on this one. I'd make it a 4 to 5 season series. That way we can explore the real darkness of the game, the nihilism of Kreia, and then I would give Darth Nihilus a voice, but very whispery. You couldn't place it, but it's a voice instead of a ghostly sound he makes in the game, which I agree with. I think Nihilus, I am here to nerf Nihilus down and make him more of a physical presence and character rather than some weird thing with a mask.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think that would be good. I would like to have, some kind of actual voice. I'm trying to, what were the name of those, the Dead Kings in Lord of the Rings, how they had kind of, it was like that whispery voice kind of thing when Frodo could hear him. So something like that maybe.
Yeah.
I think would be better suited to Nihilus, especially on screen, I think.
The voice in Dune 2 could be a good use of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think, like, maybe it sounds good on paper and in a video game, but, like, if you're, like, going to base, like, a lot of the story around someone, like, they need to have a body, a physical presence, and they need to have a voice and like a background, like you can't just make someone so mysterious and grand, like
Yep.
they have to be a character. But that's just me. Maybe some people are going to be like, keep Nihilus weird, and I'll have to be like, okay. I respect your takes, but
that's right.
My dream.
Yeah, that's right. What's yours? Yeah.
My dream adaptation for KOTOR 2. Whereas I see KOTOR 1 as a trilogy of movies, I think I see KOTOR 2 as a novel, and like I foresee us kind of covering this as like a literature course. It just brings me back to the days of like when I would be doing my undergrad, and like it's like, oh, I'm learning about the English Romance period, like gotta read all these authors and their poems, kind of learn the history, and like I should have gotten a sponsorship from Penguin's Classics or the Norton Anthology, like English lit textbooks. But it just brings me back because like you'd kind of learn the history of the authors and the time period, and then there'd kind of be like a summary of like what you just read and like things explaining the words that you didn't really understand, and like I guess that's my dream adaptation for KOTOR 2, is to be a literature course and like reading a textbook to understand it all. Because I just, maybe in 200 years, people will be, covering KOTOR 2 in a whatever form textbooks take in 2 centuries, but I mean, it's like, I could just imagine like some students like not completing their reading, and it's like they just have to totally like BS like, yeah, Kreia, what is Kreia not, and like
right. I
compare her to blank or blank, and like what do you think of this character Nihilus, like I guess that's my dream. So
yeah, there you go.
Let us know what your dream is, like, and hopefully it's the Ice-capade, but...
Hopefully it's the Ice-capade, or maybe, it would be fun, would be like one of those masterclass things that is led by Kreia, maybe. She could be like the guest instructor for a masterclass.
She would teach a dang good philosophy course.
That's right.
And at the end of it, you would, like, gain and lose influence, and it's like, I did everything right, and it's like, but that means you did everything wrong, and it's like, oh. There's a lesson in that, but
that's right.
Yeah, so that was us kind of covering KOTOR 2 for the first time, and
yeah, I'm
sort of scared of it, but
that's okay. We will face our fears about KOTOR 2 together.
Or I will katabasis this Korban cave, and face it.
That's right. Yeah, you just have to get yourself, excited about KOTOR 2, and we can get into it. But yeah, I think that it's going to be a lot of fun. Like you said, it's so like nuanced and wide. I don't think we have to take it, super seriously. From a standpoint of, where we're trying to put together like, actual like films and film theory applying to that. We can just kind of talk about the stories and the characters and the locations, and, just have some fun with it, get into it. And we definitely want to, make sure we're getting feedback from people, letting us know what they think about the game and the different characters. All those responses we got came from our newly done Discord server. So if you want to get an invite to that, go to my Instagram page, which is at @astro_droid_, and then on my little link tree, there's a link for that. So you can check out the Discord over there if you want. And we're talking about all of this stuff and movies and books and all sorts of good times on there. And then we have a Patreon patron only section of the Discord that you get access to if you join us on Patreon, which can be found at patreon.com/oldrepublicpodcast.
Yeah, and I guess I'm less scared now that we've kind of dipped our toe into the kiddie pool that is KOTOR 2, and it just kind of unfurls more than like being like a trilogy of movies. It's like we can go as in depth as we want, and like there's so many facets, like we can just have fun with it. That's how I'm gonna look at it. So
That's right. It could always be worse. You could be waking up on Paragus with Kreia in your head, and Atten is your only hope for getting off of there before it blows up. So,
good Lord.
so yeah. So on that note, I think that's going to wrap it up for our first conversation about KOTOR. So hopefully everyone listening out there enjoyed it. Let us know what you think about KOTOR and what your best ideas are for it, and we'd love to talk about it. So thanks for joining us, everyone, and may the Force be with you.